boys and girls. Welcome to VUX World, where I have a newly WD-40 microphone stand, and so there's no more squeaking, which is nice. Welcome to the show. Quick shout out to Deepgram before we get started. Deepgram, as you should know by now, is an industry-leading speech recognition provider. And if you were partaking in the webinar that we did last week with Deepgram, you'd have learned a whole lot about why some general speech recognition models, and certainly traditional speech recognition models that a lot of you might be using in your call center and maybe even using in your voice assistants, why they fall short and how the kind of end-to-end deep learning approach is better. One, for creating those general models, so you can just pick up Deepgram, throw it in your voice assistant, and likely you might see an uplift in its performance. But two, how you can retrain those models around very specific use cases to really hone in and improve that accuracy. And as I've always said and have been saying for the last 8 months or so now, if you feed rubbish into your NLU, you will get rubbish out of your NLU. So getting a clean speech recognition signal, a clean signal from speech to text, and feeding accurate text into your NLU is absolutely imperative. Deepgram is incredibly quick, so you'll have no latency performance issues. It's incredibly cost effective, and it is incredibly accurate. So please do go to deepgram.com/VUX World to learn a bit more and to try it out. It's worth kicking the tires and trying it out, because you'll be able to benchmark it against other providers and you'll be able to see just how effective it is. That is deepgram.com/VUX World. Thank you, Deepgram, for sponsoring the VUX World. And our guest today is Stephen Broadhurst. Stephen is the founder of a consultancy called Jetty, helping organizations with their conversational AI strategies, and also has a wealth of experience setting up teams and putting together strategies and programs with IBM. And so we're really interested to get into the conversation with Stephen today about how to find and select the right use case, value adding use cases, not the obvious ones that you might gravitate towards that we talk about actually quite often on this podcast. But how do you find those nuanced use cases that can bring additional business value that are not quite as obvious, and all kinds of best practice around conversational AI strategy design and development. And so, Stephen, welcome to VUX World.
Hello, lovely talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. It's nice to have you. So yeah, I was kind of in the intro there talking about a little bit about yourself and Jetty, but it's always nice to hear the story from those behind the actual company and all kind of stuff. So maybe tell us a little bit about Jetty, about yourself, and then after that we can maybe talk a little bit about IBM, what you learned there, and we can kind of take it from there. Really.
Go on, I'll tell that story forward, particularly with a reference to use cases. So my background was 20 years at IBM. I was kind of famous for being a very technical troubleshooter for technical projects and working on largely like really big customers-facing systems, high volumes, digital money, mobile money, classical CRM stuff. And then Watson happened in 2011 and hugely hyped. This kind of general Watson amorphous brand. And a couple of years later, there was lots of trouble projects. I found myself being troubled in, say, people's expectations are right up here, and delivery is having problems with what's going wrong. My background was always sort of services, not software. Worked very, very close to the software team. And when I dropped in, the use case that really made sense to me, I found made sense to my clients, really was conversational AI. It had the power to just transform the availability of a company to an individual, and we've just seen that demand for the individual to actually speak to large corporations never diminish. So doubled down on that area, and I was able to go through that journey of what's being amorphous to conversational AI. We didn't have APIs at that point. We didn't have all these different cloud-based platforms, Lewis, Dialogflow. It was really the intent and entity model that's kind of standard now. That wasn't there. That was building up. And my job is to go out to large corporates and find use cases and get those first reference projects. And I was lucky enough to lead those for the services organisation in the UK for some of the largest banks, telcos, media organisations, and put them live at volume, write the processes that we're going to do all our conversation delivery, establish a conversational analyst role within IBM UK, Ireland, and went on to lead the conversational AI practice there. And kind of hit 40 and found, as I got more and more senior, it was taking me further and further away from building bots. And it also meant that you know, this pattern, you know, in a large corporate, you know, if I want it works, just repeat it. And I really wanted to work on more interesting use cases. So left over IBM, set up in Jetty, and we've got to do some awesome work. You know, our core work is helping, you know, the large call center providers kind of led the way, insurance, banking, telco. You know, we've now got benefit companies, we've got building management companies, we've got large business directorates, we've got fintechs. You know, everybody's trying to look at what they do really, really well with this. And we've been helping corporations set up their conversational AI departments, recruit their first people, you know, select the right tools, set those up, and develop like that. And we've just got to work on some absolutely awesome use cases. So, you know, we worked for 2 years on a bot which was trading hundreds of thousands of dollars of commodities and cryptocurrencies on a single exchange. And doing that's just a hell of a lot more scary than kind of like an inbound tool reflection scenario. You know, we've worked with companies to provide bots to literally hundreds of thousands of small businesses across a huge range of verticals, like how you deal with the difference between a beauty, dog groomer, an automotive, you know, and having a bot that adds value across all of them, right through to things like we're working with an AI vending machine company that's kind of, you know, how do you tell when someone comes up and then walks away and doesn't buy anything? Like, what did they actually want? How can they actually talk to the machine? Because there's no humans here. You know, this is out somewhere. You know, in a modern business setting, like what can we do to actually talk to that person, actually find out what did you want? So yeah, I'm really interested in, you know, that journey from, you know, where people found it, where people kind of commoditized it now, how people are struggling with those commoditized bots they put out there, and like some of the really good ones where they're doing something a bit different. They're really understanding what makes conversational different. And
Nice.
you know, I just keep trying to work in really, really interesting use cases.
Nice. I could have done with one of those vending machine assistants on Sunday night where my wife broke her ankle and we found ourselves in A&E and we were in there for about 2 hours and obviously started to get a bit peggish, and it must have took me forever to find some crisps and a chocolate bar and a drink out of this vending machine, which should have had contactless payments, but for some reason it wasn't working. I couldn't get a signal in my phone to check whether there was any money in the account. And it was just, it took me about, by the time I'd actually gone and got her some food, she'd been for an x-ray, come out of the x-ray, and was basically getting seen and putting a boot on and on her way out. So, yeah, definitely helping to streamline that particular situation would have been quite nice.
Yeah, I mean, look at those technologies, like, you know, all contactless. You know, you've got new electronic paper, so the prices can be adjusted real time. You've got, and like, did you actually want a drink and they crisps and a chocolate? Was that like what you went to the machine to get?
No, it was just what you choose because that's that's all there is on offer.
So this company's looking at like places like we're in here, like the innovation center, a co-working area. You know, what do people in modern business professionals want? You know, it's probably some breakfast items, probably some food and day items. It's probably like all my energy drinks when you put in a late one. It's probably, you know, during the day. Like, do we really just want Mars bars and Cokes? Right? That's like a website, right? Like you walk up to this pretty lit thing and somebody's kind of guessed what you wanted and then thrown some products in. And all you can do is press those buttons, right? And do it or don't do it or leave. You know, we on websites, we're used to like, you know, monitoring those journeys and like where people drop out of the checkouts, etc. For me, what we see so clearly is that's not enough. People always still want to say, there's something I'm not getting here. I want to talk to the company, right? And how do you get that experience? Well, conversational's absolutely unique because this is what makes it hard and good. Like you're testing a website, does the button work? Well, what if you didn't want to press that button? Conversational, we open it up, right? They can tell you anything. And that's really hard because you've got to manage user expectation, what that bot can do. But it's really good because you're instrumenting the edge of your organization. A vending machine, very small, could be an enormous, you know, bank, whatever it is. And they will instantly tell you what they actually wanted, right? So if you've got a chance then to say, look, what I really wanted was plant-based, you know, low GI, you know, and some really cold water, right? That's what I need right now. That's information we're only getting from talking to you, right? And we don't need to mine your personal data, or we don't need to have a big thing. You know, it's a little bit of just like, I arrived, you didn't have the thing I want. Can I just get Gmail? And that is that's a little tiny microcosm which we see replicated with just giant corporates. People coming to these layered, rich experiences. Some of them are always going to be much better visually, like a map, or a large form, etc. But they still want to talk to these organisations. So what makes that transition good? And are you listening? Are you actually there monitoring the data? Are you actually this new channel that you're opening yourself up to? When it goes not so well, are you picking it up? Are you listening to things that people want to do that they're not telling you? And that's where organisations really, really, really struggle. Right? So it's like, sorry.
No, go on. Yeah, go on.
It's like mobile was 10 years ago. Everybody knows they want it and they want to give it to their customers. Everybody knows that when it's done well, they like it, but they haven't quite got the tools to test it. The setup to do it. The design language isn't there. The frameworks aren't quite there. It's quite nascent. And more importantly, you wind back 10 years, big web team, small app team. Right, now you come normally bigger app team than web team. Tiny conversational team.
Yeah.
Thousands of conversations going in. Who's looking at them?
Yeah.
And I see some organisations, they've got the point now where we did a proof of concept over here. We did like a large scale application over here. We did something internal over here. We did something a little customer facing over here. Yeah, that's on Amelia, and that's on Watson, and that's on Dialogflow. Oh, and who's maintaining these? Oh, yeah, well, we kind of did it with an external company. We stopped and right. So what are you going to do to put down a tool that means you can look at every day? Not every conversation, but which conversation do you look at? How are you iterating those forwards? How are you having the confidence to release things every night or every week? How are you rolling that forward? And we're in the stage now, going up that kind of that hard hill to that plateau of productivity that mobile's gone up to actually work out, right, let's get these departments established, get these tools in place. Let's democratize access to some of the things that data scientists kind of think are secret and are really well defined now, and things which can be done by people and really add value to the user rather than being some big like data science experiment.
The stuff you were alluding to there, which was around, like, let's say the vendor machine example, where what do people actually really want from it? And you're not capturing that when you use a GUI or hardware for the actual interface. And I shared in a previous article that I wrote one of the examples that you shared with me, which was the Sergeant Star example from the US Army. Maybe you can tell that story in a moment. But the question I kind of wanted to get to was that, and we'll give examples of this stuff when you kind of give that example. But what we're getting at is, in some cases, it's using conversational AI to find out what the real priority needs are. So that vendor machine example would be, we've just made a bunch of assumptions. We've put chocolate bars and crisps in there because we think that that's what people want. Now you only get a choice, like a website. What you see is what you get, and you only choose from the options. Using a conversational interface in that scenario would be firstly used to try and determine what it is that people need in the first place. So what are the priority needs? But then also, in the Sergeant Star example, and in a bunch of other examples which we can come to, it's also being used to identify very specific needs that are not a priority because they're more long tail. Like for example, that Sergeant Star example.
Why back with that? So it's not just like there's stages even before that, right? Like you have a moment of uncertainty before you make decisions go away. Like conversational systems let you reach somebody in that moment. Like you are the expert, you are the corporation, you know everything about your business. They are there, right, and they're about to leave. You can actually reach them in the moment. That's the first thing. Second thing is about establishing trust. Right? This is your voice as an organization talking to the individual. They don't know whether they want to do something with you, right? So I'm just like, they don't want to know they want to drop an RV, but they are there thinking about it. Right? Like you don't have the chance often to put a human there, right? But you've got to capture that moment. So before you've even got into working out what did they actually want to do, you've got to say, how am I presenting myself? What information do I need to even start this conversation? And how do I establish enough personal authority in this virtual assistant, this virtual employee that I'm putting out there representing my brand, to actually mean that the customer does want to be engaged, right? And this is a key way which as humans, we've communicated for years and worked out, do we want to continue this experience? Right? Now, if you lead off and you say, right, you have to log in, download this app, right? Like, that's a huge trust jump. Download this app, set your notifications, ask them not to track all your data, etc. But before I do that, there's that moment where I'm deciding, and that's where conversation, I think, works wonderfully lots of times. As soon as you've got that, you've then got this stream of information coming in, which you can say, well, what did that person want to do? Right? So,
yeah,
I mean, we can look at Sergeant Star, because I think it's an oldie but a goodie. It's been replaced by a new experience, and I think the new experience really shows some of the mistakes that when we kind of have these cookie-cutter implementations, you fall into. Right? So if you go to Go Army now, it has a beautiful new website. Sergeant Star was getting very old UI. Beautiful new webpage. You look through it with all this information. Chat now. Okay. You click that chat now button, it pops up. First name, last name. Okay, maybe I put my real name in, maybe I don't, maybe I'm not certain. Next it says hello, wavy emoji. I'm not sure that's very army. And then it says, please confirm that you're over 17 and interested in joining the army, giving us your name, your full address, your postcode, your zip code, your date of birth. What? Right, now you compare that to the old Sergeant Star experience, which was, we are going to just say, what do you want to know? Anonymous, pop up. And they actually started finding out what they wanted to know. They was filling a business case, not just for the army in terms of, there's fantastic stats out there. One of the reasons I really like about it is there's 5 years of data. The entire response sets in the public domain. They save like having 100,000 conversations a year, huge number of saved hours. So the business case behind it was really, really good. But then you turn it around, business case for the user was really, really good. Okay? So the new version is really intimidating, really looking you in. Now, I'm sure that's great for the corporation on the back, or the army on the back in this case, in that, like, we've cleared off all the time wasters, people coming through to this channel. But actually, aren't you interested in those people who need the information to make that decision? The old Start Style was super good for that, and they monitored it every day, absolutely crucial and conversational, and they released every month. It ended up having like 850 intents, and I'm sorry, 850 responses, and that's well into the range where that's deeper than people will get through quickly. Right, like, so you could talk to it for quite a while and actually find some things out, and they found out what things people really wanted to ask, not what they assumed people wanted to ask. If you're 18, 19, 20, early 20s, the recruiting system, well, it has changed, and COVID's changed the world. It used to be like a high street or main street recruiting office. You go sit down and you talk to a recruiting sergeant. Like, are you going to be comfortable in that situation, like really asking what you want to know? Flip it around. That recruiting sergeant, how are they incentivized? Maybe they're not on a commission, but someone's going to be looking at their numbers. Their mission is to get you to sign up. Is that actually a good way for you discovering something? Is that recruiting sergeant going to give you the absolute textbook army answer?
Is it even ethical that someone may or may not, but may use some kind of pressure selling psychological persuasion to encourage people to sign up to a job that might endanger their life?
Right. And one of the reasons I like Sergeant Star is that it grew, and they added a lot of answers that really addressed what people in that indecisive moment really wanted to know. So, what do you think people wanted to know?
Well, I'm kind of a little bit tainted by this because you have told me this and I have written about it, but I will say what I found very interesting was that it was things that an 18-year-old, maybe timid, not that confident, faced in front of a large, giant mountain of a guy who's incentivized to get him to sign up. You're not going to ask them the kind of questions that you would ask your mate or something like that, So go on, share the kind of things that that they found.
From the simple, will I die? Yes, my health insurance. Do I have to shower with other men? What sort of guns will I get to shoot? And this was all there, and Sergeant Star wrapped it up with a set of personality that people could understand. They levered those movies things. It was accessible. It had really good fallback handling. Like, if you try to order it around, it will say, "Wait, I'm the drill sergeant," and kind of get back on track. It was good, and it was always textbook, and you could see the answers evolve for things like LGBT issues through the army over that time. I think it was great. But winding it back to the use case, it was making a virtue of AI. It was saying, we're perfectly prepared to make this completely anonymous, and you can just come and talk to us. We're not worried about you wasting our time. Yeah, use this when you need it. It had used that personality there, and it was always going to be, well, as unbiased as your training said, it wasn't going to be influenced. Like, it was going to meet that ethical standard. It was always going to give the textbook army answer. Even if that wasn't the best answer, even if they're out there, maybe the desire was that they really wanted to talk to somebody who's gone through that. But this first experience, this first layer, I thought was really valuable and really clearly showed thinking about the experience.
For the record, I actually agree with your kind of praise of that type of use case, because I think that if you're trying to be genuine, you're trying to really uncover the needs of your customers, if you're being truly customer centric and you're not really thinking about yourself initially and you're trying to just service what people need, then you end up with a better experience, and it all ties back into what's good for you. The other way of looking at it might be that Sergeant Star, I don't know if this is the case or not, but for hypothetical reasons, let's just say that Sergeant Star wasn't generating, or the website with Sergeant Star on it wasn't generating that many inquiries for people wanting to join up. Perhaps that being able to ask what kind of gun will I get and will I die, and the responses to that may have dissuaded people from joining. So to play devil's advocate, or for argument's sake, let's imagine that Sergeant Star wasn't actually contributing to people signing up to the army. It might have done, I don't know, but let's say it wasn't. And then the new one, I agree that it's not a very good conversational experience. It's not a very good customer experience when you're the one that's being asked to give up your data before you've got any value out of the interaction.
Right.
But that seems to be that is definitely very closely aligned to what the incentives of the organization is, which is get people's details, get leads, follow up with appointments, get people signed up to the army. And so you've almost got this kind of like, and maybe it's a challenge you've observed with organizations, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, which is that the needs in the short term of the organization to hit their targets, and in this case, generate people to speak to get to sign up to the army, versus the completely customer centric way of doing it, which is just respond to what any people need and then tag the business goals onto the back of it. I actually agree that latter example is the right way to go. However, not every company does that. So have you observed this kind of friction in a conversational experience whereby the business really just wants it to achieve that one thing for the business, but the customer needs suggest that actually it needs to be a bit more dynamic?
Right, and let's give some real examples. So, telcos, really big call center estates. The head of a number of call centers has said to me, everyone's been pitching to me for years and years about call deflection. Right? If all those call deflection promises turned out, they have literally negative inbound, chats, etc. And there are these cookie cutter techniques now that have been layered on top of each other, and they miss those steps of empowerment of the bot and personal authority of the bot to actually do something. Like, the business case for the user has completely gone. Now, I'm not picking any one telco. I think this is a really widespread malaise, but this was a real experience. I was trying to fix my old mother's mobile phone, and went to the provider's website, and they have like a help contact us letterbox search bar. You type in and it starts prompting you for help articles, and you have to go through that before you can get any contact details. Okay, those are very lightweight. They're based on basically the same on a new technology. So if you're monitoring that, it's a great way of finding out how people drop into it. Again, I think these conversational teams have to be able to work across different conversational forms. That's a one-liner, but really useful. But anyway, didn't find that. It was a really complex issue. She couldn't find certain numbers. It reverted to a voicemail from 4 years ago. Like, this was not going to be a simple fix. Come down, click the chatbot. Chatbot pops up. Chatbot tries to make me do all the things that I've already looked at on screen.
Mm.
And that's the worst kind of experience. We see that so much. Basically, being a tooltip for the stuff you've already gone past. And then the chatbot said, okay, I'm going to have to hand you over. And then you hand it over to somebody, might be in the UK, might be in the Philippines, might be in India, might be in Mexico, or US, wherever they are. And they are sat in front of a long tail search tool with a bigger database of things, and then have to take me through the 5 mandatory things that I've done. And then I got to a customer response team, and then they phoned me back 5 days later, and then the 14 team that eventually fixed it. What did the bot add? They're saying, well, the first step's really lightweight and easy, and deflects a lot of calls. Okay, maybe. But then you had a personality in the middle of it. What did that add? Well, that personality wasn't actually empowered to do anything for the user. It didn't shortcut any stage. Right? And it was just another layer that we've layered onto the experience to kind of push people away. So maybe it was adding up to statistics, but actually it's probably much more adding up to me, trying to work out how do I cut through these layers, because I know I have to get there. And it caused an immense amount of frustration in the middle. Let's flip it on its head. Let's look at examples where they've really empowered the bot and they've really let it do something for you, and what the difference in user feedback is. So I think I've interviewed certainly one of the most in the world of conversational analysts. Time in IBM, setting up companies regularly. And one of my questions, this is a hint for anyone who ever interviews with me, is what is your favorite bot? Or explain a really good bot experience, why you liked it. If you want to build this, why you like it. Or even tell me a terrible one, but at least understand it and go into understanding use cases. And one of the ones that comes through to me is that, often people will talk about the Amazon returns bot. Not a super sexy use case, but it's one that lots and lots of people have interacted with, and it had 2 things. I don't even think the natural language was super good some of the time, but it had got 2 things utterly right. It had personal authority and it was empowered, and they established that incredibly quickly. You went onto the returns bot, and it said, hi, is it a problem with this product? Because it knows the last thing you ordered, right? It knows all the things you've ordered. That's the knowledge of the company, and they've given it to the bot and empowered it. It's like, is a problem with this? And you said yes, and they said, okay, what's wrong? Oh, I want to return it. Okay, why? Right? And it's like it turned up and the packaging was all smashed up, etc. And the bot would actually say, thinking, and it would come back and say, I've issued you a refund, or I've arranged it. It was empowered to do the thing you want. And that was actually the number 1 quickest way of getting through that. And you know that if you did it, you would get through to resolve. Right? So that's a great example where that bot had a business case, because it stops you talking to a human, it stops you having that, but it had a business case to use it is actually the best way, and it was empowered to do the thing it wants. And then you go, well, how many people are we going through that journey? You're back to journey tracking. How many people reach that endpoint? What's the balance of that prediction in the middle of should we just fund this or not? How much money are we making or losing based on how good that prediction is? And how many people are dropping out of the experience before they get there? Right? So you go back to that telco, what's the bot supposed to be? Why are we having a conversation? Like, if it's just to triage me, that's fine, but why did it put me through to the reporting team? Right? Why did I, how could it not check what I've already done? Could it not run all the network checks for me automatically? And I've worked and delivered this, is that, these companies have an enormous amount of information on their routers about, your signal strength, mobile, if you're talking home broadband, how do they put that into something that actually helps you there? And then when it is a problem with the management time, get you through. Now, too often it's just, we'll just try a bunch of the same things, try and push out that 3 or 4%. And yet, sometimes just turning it off and turning it back on again is going to fix it. And I can sure they can show the benefits case. But the user benefit case isn't there. It's not worth me talking to this because its empowerment and its knowledge are too low. And sorry.
No, go on, yeah.
And that's what you've got to think. Every conversational use case you've got to, here's my litmus test. Should I have a conversational system? Say I'm your best customer service representative. Okay, I'm sat there, I've got a pile of paper on my desk, these documents, and I've got this screen with just this access. If you came in with this problem, could that person, using only the computer screen and that document's help you? Because they're the best AI we have. They're the most expensive cost of doing that. This is the greatest person in the organization. Can they help you? Because you're going to have a lovely experience. They're going to be great with you. But with only this system access and this knowledge, could they help you? Because if the answer is no, you should not put a bot in that situation, because the bot's not going to be quite that good, right? And it hasn't got the tools to help it. You've not empowered it with the knowledge to say it knows what's going on. You've not given it the 6 analysis to solve the problems. You're just wasting your budget in developing that alongside the user's time in doing that.
Where do you stand with? So there's two ways of approaching it, isn't it, for organizations that are implementing this stuff. One is that you start a bit like Sergeant Star, which is the whole point of it is to kind of handle a little bit of that, what would you call it? Not necessarily, maybe it's low-hanging fruit, but it's not transaction. It's more kind of like FAQs, helping out with research, question and answer. So that's one way of approaching it. The other way of approaching it is to do something like the returns bot, where it just does one thing, but it does one thing pretty well. And the risk of both of those is that on the FAQ side, it's not going to do anything transactional, so you're going to disappoint some people. On the transactional side, muted my mic. On the transactional side, it's just going to do one thing, and so it's not going to do all of the ancillary stuff, and so you're going to disappoint people there as well. Obviously, over time, the twain shall meet, but in terms of when people begin, would you say that it's better to begin in a Sergeant Star, kind of like broaden the funnel, gather questions, answer, but not transactional? Or do you think it's better off going very narrow and specific like the returns bot and foregoing the broader stuff?
I think they're both equally valid. I think they meet in the middle. I think you have to get started somewhere. I think the important thing is, why are we using conversational? Is that actually the best user experience mode for it? Right? Doesn't matter which way you're going. And then once you've started it, how are you avoiding the pitfalls of that start point, and how are you monitoring it? So if you start wide, well, you've got to start off with actually a set of FAQs that are actually reasonably big, right? Like the starting point for you has got to be wider than a very narrow transactional plot. So you can't start with 10 and 10 or 40, or you're going to need an actual decent set. So first challenge there for the organization is finding a really good tool that helps you say, well, we've got some data sets from our internal searches or something like that. Like, how are we going to create a really good taxonomy of responses and FAQs to do that? And starting too small will actually hurt you. So you've actually got to start a bit bigger. Or actually, we're going to have this, and then when it comes to transactional, how do we get it somewhere that you can actually do that transactional thing, right? So getting out of the way. Go narrow. Equally good. We're going to make it do this thing end to end because we know how many of those we have, and we're going to empower it to actually do that end to end, right? And you've always got the authentication, non-authentication things. You assume you've got that sorted. You're going to let the bot do this task for this user. Fantastic. But as soon as it's outside of that task, do not mess about. Get out of the way. Right. So well done. You've started. You've avoided the pitfalls of either channel, and you've got started. And then a lot of people stop, and they move on to the next bot scenario, and they think that's no. What you opened up was a chance to have a conversation in this wide situation or this narrow situation, and you're immediately finding out people are dropping out of that journey. On the conversational throw, is someone looking at the abandonment? Is someone looking at the deflection level? Are some people looking at how many endpoints of values you're delivering every day? And for those journeys that are being really clearly demonstrated, not only going to iterate the training, improve the flows, work on the language. No, actually, how are we adding things that people want to do on there? How does it become a useful channel? And so start whichever way you want, avoid the pitfalls, but realize you're starting on a journey with a new channel that's going to need someone there and a set of tools and a set of iterations to continue and maintain. Because so many of the bots I see just get pulled down because they've run into that wall of, we invested a certain amount of money to do one thing, that was good, and we moved on to something else, and no one's maintaining the channel. And if that happened with your app or your website, it would be a hoo-ha. But one of the reasons is those key conversational stats aren't being serviced up. People don't realise the number of people they're annoying, with these systems when they're annoying, or succeeding when they're succeeding, and they're not continually maintaining that channel and growing it forward.
Interesting. So the next thing then would be around, let's say that you begin or you have any kind of chatbot set up or a voice assistant or whatever it might be, and you're monitoring the transcripts and you're monitoring where it's falling down and what it's not understanding and all that kind of stuff. But then you've got this kind of next decision to make, which is, do we then start going for the next kind of heavy hitting transactional use case? Like in Amazon's case, let's say the returns bot is the first instance. Maybe the next one is something like, I don't know, changing your address or updating card details, or maybe it's something like actually buying something through the chatbot or voices. Do you know what I'm saying? Like whatever that next transactional thing is. So you've got that option. Then you've also got the option of doing that really detailed monitoring and searching for those long tail use cases, like the example you gave there of the Sergeant Star, someone asking, "Will I have to shower with dudes?" Let's say, like, if that's like a not that.
Yeah, we lost you.
Wow, what on earth happened there? Are we still live as well? What on earth? I'm so sorry about that. Literally, my machine just stopped and completely restarted the whole thing. That is so weird.
That's all right. I was there going, oh, what?
Yeah. Wow. I don't know what happened. I really don't know what happened there. The good thing is that it's still going. Apologies to those who are tuning in the audio broadcast. I will put all of this stuff out, so we'll be back on track. Right. So what I was saying there is,
What's the next meter use case? Well, I think a lot of that depends on like how well exposed your internal services are, especially as corporates. You've always got a legacy estate. So what's next often depends in corporates not on like the ideal conversational use case, but like what is there to integrate, what can we take in. So a lot of the time it's still going to be identifying, recognizing, acknowledging what the user wants to do, and then saying this is the best way to do it. That's still value, routing, triage, these are still valuable things for an organization. But you're probably going to be picking up the use cases there. Now, whether to continue that journey at all is really not answered by that. Like if you're committed to a conversational channel, you worked out in that user journey, people still relentlessly want to speak to you as an organization. And you've got to think about, well, how do they want to speak to us? Where are we going to meet them? Right? Like I think one of the reasons for conversation is the move to messaging. You know, we have chosen in our personal lives to move almost entirely. I talked about my mother earlier on. Like, I text her all the time. She texts me. She knows that fits around my work, etc. And yes, I have a long child journey. We have a long chat. You know, that's great. But she fits around my life and I fit around her life. I mean, corporations largely have refused to do that, although they're starting to do that, right? So I think often conversational comes into that stage of let's try and meet you where you live, right? Now, if you've decided that's important, often people say we simply cannot expose ourselves to that degree of contact without some sort of automatic AI. And I think that's one of the killer reasons. You know, leap back to the vending machine, there's literally no people there. So you're talking to nobody or a machine, right? But also often, like, say you're going to be available on, what's wonderful about conversational? Completely multimodal. If you can express yourself to what you say, you can be on SMS, you can be on Facebook, you can be on Google, you can be on Apple, right? Like, you can offer this channel and find people wherever they are and fit around their day. So if you've decided that that's really important to offer your users, then you are committed to it for that reason, right? And you've decided that this experience is delivered conversationally well, because actually a conversation really makes sense here. It's not an app that people are prepared to download and install at this point. It's not sufficed by the website. There is a conversation, there's some talking back and forward to actually happen. Then you're committed to this and you should be monitoring it and carrying on. If you're not convinced that actually you need that conversation, actually an app is better than a website, stop. You've experimented, you've learned, you've perhaps gathered some really valuable data about what that, but stop. Let me give a really good example of this, which is financial health. We're coming out of COVID. You know, we've got a cost of living crisis in the UK. There's a lot of corporations looking at like mental well-being, financial well-being, and you know, kind of it's a difficult conversation to have with your employees because, like, pay them, right? Like you're asking them, right? Like, that's probably what they want to know. So you look at apps which I think do a good job on this. One is Meet Clio. Recently actually dropped out of the UK market and concentrate on the US. But Meet Clio is a financial aggregation app. So you load all your bank accounts in, and then it presents that information back to you as a conversation. What? Why is that better than the banking app? Well, in the UK, what population of people struggle with percentages?
Say again, sorry.
What proportion of the UK do you think struggle with percentages?
I would think that's a percentage question. So I'm one of them. I would say, as in struggle to work out percentages. I think that's quite high. I reckon that's about 60 to 70%.
Absolutely. Well, so estimates are really wide when you're studying it, from about 20%, so basically completed philosophy. Often you see about a third. Numeracy for Numeracy National did a survey of like some simple questions about like different special offers, 5 questions, 50% of the population only got 3 right or less.
Wow.
So, you know, and that's when you're being calm. Like, if you're in the moment being asked, is this a right thing to do, etc., like, are you really going to be that focused on the numbers? So again, meet people where they live, right? If you're struggling with financial, having just a chatbot to talk to is going to do nothing for you. I like Clio because it's very opinionated app, right? It is trying to help you save. It is trying to help you make sensible, spending decisions. It's trying to give you insight across all your accounts. So they've taken all of the open APIs that the banks are enforced to provide now and integrate them so you can see your entire financial status. They're helping you set goals. And then they're delivering it to you conversational because you can then ask in the moment. And when, again, this is one that people come in and say regularly, this is something I really like. This is one of their examples. They give them a chatbot that really adds to them. So you can say, like, how much am I spending with Uber or your favorite delivery company? You know, you can say, can I afford to buy this? Right? And so in the moment, and again, that anonymous, trusted advice, you already trust this because you're giving it your banking accounts. They hold insurance against your costs. So you've agreed to have that. They have all your information and they're using it for you. And you know it's private. And perhaps you've got your friends with you and you're trying to buy something and you don't actually want to ask them whether this is a good idea or not. You need that little bit of advice. You need those numbers turning into. And people are not good with numbers. And if you look at the demographic of people trying to save to buy a house, they are enormously messaging focused. You know, I was working with some driving instructors, and if you compare small businesses with driving instructors compared to like restaurants, for instance, you know, people come to 17 or 18 in the UK, they want a driving lesson. There's lots of arranging there with, you know, what time the appointment is and changes, etc. Huge messaging, fantastic channel if you're a driving instructor is to support messaging really, really well. That gets difficult with all these different channels, and bots can help. But you know, if you look at that, in the moment, you can get an answer and you get an opinion based on your data that you've trusted to give. So it's adding more than just a screen of data. That conversational experience is there for a reason. And again, they've got the persona really look nice. Ria, one of the user researchers online, talking about this, and she says one of the users refers to it as your snarky art.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody gives you £20 and then says, but how are you going to spend it, right?
Yeah.
I really like Me Cleo because it's a little bit sweary, it's a little bit more, it's not kind of bland corporate, right? But it's really meeting the user where they live in the moment, talking their language, and actually using the trust you've given it to use your knowledge practice. And I think that's a great example of why conversation beats hands down in that situation, just looking at your bank account.
Interesting.
And so on that whole journey, that's what you need to do. Verify why we're using it, and then keep on growing where you can with like whatever services or oriented architecture you've got to support it.
Interesting. One of the questions that I was going to ask is, where should your priorities be spent? Like, one, which is working on the next big use case, and two, versus working on finding that very long tail kind of stuff. And I think Clio, I'm just on the website now. Clio, I think, is showing in its homepage an example of how finding those long tail use cases can turn out to end up being potentially a product defining feature. So for example, one of the things that it has on, you go to the web page, right? The homepage says a quick spot or building credit. It's all about something money app that doesn't suck, right? That's the whole thing. The icon is a pizza slice for your mouse. Your mouse icon is a pizza slice. So it's obviously they're trying to be quite cool and hip. And the introductory message on the app, on the homepage, is I'm Cleo with an emoji wave sign. Here to make money easier. Now let's sort your shit out. So it's very much to the point. It's obviously catering for probably a younger, like, messaging first demographic. But the very first use case, when you scroll down, the example that pops up is the user says, roast me, Cleo, roast me. And Cleo says 12 trips to McDonald's this month. Any more, and I'll start listing this as a bill. So it's like that use case, roast me. I don't know whether that would have been like, it might have been an idea from the marketing team, but it may well have been something that come from user feedback.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, people have been funny with this thing. And all of a sudden that's turned into the main use case that's presented on the website.
I know, and they really have gone for those graphics and that stuff. You go to the FAQs, and there's an awful lot of very worthy stuff that's built up. But you know, it is that discovery. Car builders call it surprise and delight. Some of your best moments with a conversational app are where it does something that impresses you or surprises you, and you weren't quite expecting it. So Me Cleo was something that I found about because one of my colleagues said. He was a client executive. He spent a lot of time taking me for coffee. There was a Nero's next door. And Me Cleo said, did you know you're at the top 0.5% of all Cafe Nero spenders in the country? Are you okay with that? Right? Right? And he was just like, okay, that's different.
Yeah.
Right? So you know, and Me Cleo have doubled down. They've made some really hard decisions, going US, really focusing on the ground. They've perhaps even pushed the sarcasticness too far. Right? I don't know, but they are out there and trying it. I have a huge amount of respect for what they're doing. But turning it to wider corporate stuff, you know, almost all these corporates now, like I said, have experimented probably with 3 or 4 bots, different use cases. And the first thing you need to do is say, we cannot have 4 different ways of working with systems on 4 different technologies, right? We need a unifying tool that actually lets us look at these intents and models and work out which of these use cases are for us. Like, you start 4 things, probably one of them's brilliant, one of them's okay, and 2 of them, maybe that wasn't the best solution, right? And you've got to make really hard decisions about which ones you continue with. And like you said, in why are you doing it with conversational? For these reasons, double down on those, and then grow those use cases so it becomes a really, really useful thing. It has that, user business case as well as the organizational business case. And I think that's something you can replicate regardless of your business. So look for those surprise and delights. They really, really help you, but actually decide whether this is something at all that the core part of it really works, and how you organically grow that out.
A lot of things that hinder businesses as well is not having either access to the data that they need to give to the customer. So, for example, that Amazon returns bot, being able to access the line of business systems to enable the bot to be able to handle that transaction is one thing that some companies don't have. The Sergeant Star example, or the not necessarily the Meet Clear one, but maybe the Meet Clear one. The examples where it's Q&A, where there's questions and answers. Some organizations have vast knowledge bases that customer service representatives or whatever would utilize, but that knowledge is wrapped up, stored on premise or something mad like that, and it can't be got to by a chatbot. So you've got data limitations as far as being able to give the user what they need. The data limitations, I think, around how to train your model and where to get that data from is a slightly separate thing. But the first thing around having the business data to be able to satisfy your use case is one challenge. But an organization that has data and has a lot of data that has done something as well, which you've mentioned in the past, is Yell.com. The Yell.com seems to be something like, it's got so much data. Surely they can make a good kind of experience with their chat kind of chatbot. I wonder if you can share a little bit of light on what that use case looks like.
Yeah. So Yell is going through a huge transformation. Huge Yellow Pages book, going to be a digital online directory, and now talking about how they move to be a marketplace and wide digital services, etc. And when you look at that chatbot, they've given it their Hartley brand. So J.R. Hartley, probably the most famous 1980s, 1990s advert for the Yellow Pages. They put all their brand into it because they recognise that the Googles, the Facebooks, the Apples of this world are disintermediating that relationship. People are finding trusted services through social media and their friends, etc. They have to exist in those spaces in order to do that. And if you look at what their value case is, they help lots and lots of small organizations. We're a Yell customer, right? We have a chatbot through Yell on our page that's been enabled. How do you help businesses which are single owner, multiple, small numbers of people who are very busy, be present in those places? So they've got like a unified inbox. That's really clear. They're handling different parts of the problem, like the provisioning. How do you set all these things up? You might not know how to do it, right? How do you have that up? And how do you get the data? If you look at the data they have an enormous amount of data. Of course they do. I mean, we can speculate what it is, but previously that's all been paper-based and that's all been web-based, and they're now moving into conversational data. And again, let's speculate about if you imagine the conversations coming through, how much more do you going to learn about what the tasks that people actually want to do, what the problems they face are? And I'd ask them to sort of think about how do you make that valuable back to the individual companies, the merchants down there, and the users, right? Like, because as a plumber, you might not know 100 most common jobs. Like, probably you do for your day to day. But you don't know what people are out there struggling, trying to find there. And how do you react to that? And what's a really, really good use case? So, I think I come back to, like, there are companies that have talked online about how they're entering this journey and how they're starting. Well done for enormous transformation, really working hard to transform themselves into a still new space and gathering a huge amount of data. I think that's a journey lots and lots and lots of companies on. They've got out there, they've gathered the data, but they still aren't looking at what that's telling them, and they're iterating that experience and having the tools to iterate that experience relatively fast alongside the rest of their transformation. And again, you don't just select a use case once, you continually reevaluate that use case. So, is it working for our users? Is it working for us? Which is the directions? How do we get efficiencies for maintaining all these bots by a common set of tooling, common set of processes, common set of people? How do we have that insight propagate up? How do we make it available to other parts of the company? We've talked about services like chatbots struggling to integrate into like the back-end services. I'll flip it around. How does the chatbot provide the information it's got to the rest of the services? Right? Jubilee Bank Holiday. We just had Jubilee 2 days off in the UK. Working with a company, and they saw an enormous spike in deflection of opening hour queries. And they're like, this is brilliant. The bot's deflected all these queries at Bank Holiday. People coming in, and they really wanted to know what the opening hours was. Okay, that's an interesting observation. Saw it, the morning after, verified it was really happening. Now, look at the use case though. People were coming from a page which pretty much had the opening hours on it, be that Google or Apple or wherever, right? Or their core web page on there too. Now, people are actually wanting a conversation. Again, here's the moment. They've seen it on screen, but they still want to talk to you because they want to know, look, it's a Jubilee. Have you updated this? Is it actually up to date, right? That was the need for the conversation. The chatbot was just giving the same answer they had on the screen. So my challenge to the organization was, what did it actually take to help the user in this conversation? And actually, I'm imagining what the ideal experience would be if I give the same answer, say, hey, this is the opening hours, and just to let you know, they updated it last Tuesday, or these are the standard opening hours. I'm asking for you now, right? Or these are the opening hours. I had a conversation earlier, and I asked them that they confirmed, yes, these are still the opening hours. How can you add the authority that actually says, you were uncertain, you stepped up to conversation, and the bots actually had personal authority and integration to add that? Google are doing that exact use case now. There's a tiny little blue thing under their opening hours, which says updated by the organization 4 days ago. Right? That's the observation that monitoring at the edge of your enterprise, your conversation will really tell you, and it tells you where your conversation development needs to go.
Very good, very good. One final thing, the hypothetical, perhaps, not hypothetical, maybe it's a future casting thing. It got me thinking when you were talking about the Yellow Pages, what used to be called the Yellow Pages, now obviously called Yell. For those in the US, you might not be familiar with this, but in the UK, there is a Yellow Pages advert. Steve, I'm sure you remember this, where it was a young lad and either his neighbor or whatever it is, like a girl who was slightly taller than him. And he always, in the advert, he goes and gets the Yellow Pages and he puts the Yellow Pages down. He stands on the Yellow Pages and he gives this girl a kiss. And he's only, they're just kids, just playing around or whatever. And the Yellow Pages was used to kind of like boost him up and make him a bit taller. I don't know if you remember that advert. And that always kind of sticks in my mind. The Yellow Pages are obviously saying, look, there's so much information in here. It makes you taller if you stand on it or whatever it is. But that always kind of sticks in my mind. I don't know why, but it's like through advertising and through branding, there are these moments, these cultural moments that stick in your mind forever, and you remember them always. Everyone always knows the holidays are coming Coca-Cola advert when it comes on at Christmas time, and like that symbolizes that Christmas is here, kind of thing. Do you think that we'll get to a point where an AI assistant has so much cultural, has a position in the culture so much so that it is remembered as much as that Yellow Pages advert, or as much as the Coca-Cola Christmas holidays advert? Or do you think that we're kind of, it's just a totally different thing and it's not quite the same?
No, I absolutely think it's going to get there, but I don't think it would be that kind of visual memory. I would like to think that you will start remembering when an organisation, because we're talking about corporate simultaneously, and an organisation's version for it, their AI, whatever it was, did something for you that was, in a tiny little way, life-changing. So I've got my human version of that, and I'm waiting for my own version of that. So my human version of that was I was working out in Warsaw, and I was an enormous British Airways frequent flyer. And British Airways scheme's not quite as good as it used to be, but it used to be very, very, very good. And I was trying to get out at Christmas, and had all the gold cards and everything like that. I've been doing it for several years, and fog comes in, right? And there's only one plane leaving, and they've got to work out who gets on the flight, and I just walked straight through. And I turned around to a poor person behind me and said, "I'm sorry, you haven't got a seat." And that was the moment where that company decided that actually right now I was more important, that I was going to get home because of that. Now, actually, I felt really, really bad about that day, the people who didn't get home. But that was a moment when the company recognized me and mined me and did something. Now, that is the sort of decision which will transition to be an AI, right? Like, we've previously had to divert airports. My wife and I drove from Heathrow to Edinburgh to catch a flight once, just because of capable main issues. And if and when an AI reaches out to you in the car when you're on the airport, actually, I've been to the wrong airport in a couple of countries wrong, and told me, "Stephen, you're driving to the wrong airport. Your flight's from Gatwick, not Heathrow." Right? That's going to be one of those moments, right? So again, the personal authority, the trust. This is a trusted relationship with a company, with humans and with AIs, and then empowering the AI to make a really important decision. When companies get there and reach out to you in the moment, yes, I think those will be some of your most powerful experiences. And I think that they're not able to do that at the moment just because of the scale of the communication channel that they face. And that's why they're looking to AI. They know they have this data. They know they have the trust in the relationship, but they can't reach out in the moment with a human and talk to you in that way. And if they can get AIs to the position where they can do that, that's where we're going to go from kind of inbound reflection to what I call really, really interesting outbound in the moment use cases. I think that's where the future is.
Nice. Stephen Broadhurst, thank you so much for joining us. Boys and girls, visit thinjetty.com for more information. thinjetty.com to find out more about Stephen's company, what they do, and how they might be able to help you as well. Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Kane. You have a great day, and thank you, everyone.